I'm gonna have to watch the first episode of the TV show after this to scrub this from my mind. It is my absolute belief that you should only read vampire fiction with red wine. Cheers. Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to How to Train Your Gavin. Now I have another big one for you guys. I'm always so excited about these kinds of vlogs where I read a whole series in one video because I never know how long it's going to be. They have ranged between an hour to nearly 5 hours long. And there's a part of me that wants to break my record. There's a part of me that wants this video to be over 5 hours. And at the same time, I'm like, who would watch 5 hours of me talking about a book series that started in the 90s and spawned a hit CW TV show of the same name? Who would watch that? You're about to say yourself, aren't you? Well, I know I would, but I doubt this video is going to get that long. So what am I reading in this video? I will be reading the entire Vampire Diaries series by L.J. Smith. I do want to preface this by saying I do believe that books 8 through 13 might be ghostwritten. I believe L.J. Smith lost the rights to the Vampire Diaries, even though it's her book series. After book 7, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but a few people have mentioned that the last several books are ghostwritten, so that's interesting. I will try and find out who the ghostwriters were and try and mention them later on in the video when I get to those books. But I think for certain, the first 2 Vampire Diaries series that I'm reading are written by the L.J. Smith. Now this is my first time reading the first few Vampire Diaries books. I believe I read the first 3 back when I was obsessed with the CW TV show, like obsessed, obscenely obsessed. I'm not even going to tell you which team I was on. Team Stefan, Team Damon, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to let you try and work it out. In fact, let me know down in the comments. Do you think I'm Team Damon or Team Stefan? Because I was definitely leaning towards one of them. I mean, not that I would kick either of them out of bed, but still. However, it was probably around about 12 years ago when I read the first 3 books, so all memory of them is forgotten. I cannot remember what I thought of them, so I will be essentially reading this for the first time. I can't even remember if the general plotline is the same as the CW TV show. I can't remember. I do remember that there was Elena and a Stefan and a Damon, but that's all I really remember about it. So bottom line, my first time reading this entire series and I'm pumped. So the books I will be covering, let's go through them. I'll never be able to get them back in the box once I get them out though. So there are apparently 4 series. The original series is just Vampire Diaries. So the first book is The Awakening. And then we do have The Struggle. And I do quite like these covers. They're quite minimalistic. And at least they all match, which is something I always appreciate. The third book is called The Fury. And I just genuinely can't remember anything about these books. And then the 4th one is The Reunion. So I believe these originally came out in the 90s, very early 90s. They might have came out the year I was born, actually, 1992. Editing Gav, please correct me if I'm wrong on the screen. But I do believe these were written in the early 90s. So I don't think these will probably hold up today, but we're going to find out. I will say I'm going to go through everything. I will go in depth on each book. I will reveal spoilers and stuff. So if you do want to read these first, then please go ahead. But there will be no stone left unturned. So if it's good, if it's bad, you'll know about it. And then the Return series, which were these written when the TV show started? Did they think, oh, the TV show's going to be popular, let's milk this cash cow, and then brought them out, you know, like what they did with Pretty Little Liars, which I also have a reading vlog for, so I'll link that down below if you've missed it. But yeah, we have The Return, Nightfall, and then The Return, Shadow Souls, and finally The Return, Midnight. So this is a sort of trilogy. As you can tell, I don't have a script for these videos. I just sit down and talk. It usually means that these videos are all over the place. And then we have the Hunters, so we have Phantom, and then Moonsong, and finally Destiny Rising. No idea what any of these are about. I will go through each book and tell you what each book is about as well, just in case you're wondering, well, Gav, you haven't explained what these books are about. I'll get there. And then finally The Salvation, which we have Unseen, we have Unspoken, and then we also have Unmasked. I do actually love the way that these all kind of match one another and fit. So the titles do sound superb, and I hope it's not the case of the outside packaging is better than what's on the inside. So that's 13 books in one video. So with this potentially being a really long vlog, don't forget to 1, grab yourself a snack or a drink, get yourself the refreshments, get cozy, do what you need to do. And 2, if you do end up enjoying this video, don't forget to leave it a like and subscribe if you haven't already. And let's start reading the Vampire Diaries. Oh god. Oh, I've already got regrets. I already regret this. Before I start reading The Awakening, which I'm so pumped for, I have pretty much all day to just read, and I'm so excited for that. I wanted to show you my Blu-rays, my Vampire Diaries Blu-rays that I bought. I imported these from America because I was obsessed with collecting Blu-rays. Before collecting books, I was obsessed with collecting Blu-rays. And I would import as many as I could from America because they would usually have matching slipcovers and things like that. So with the TV show Vampire Diaries, I ended up getting the first season, which is... it makes me want to rewatch the show from the beginning, in all honesty. The second season, which was a great season actually, if you ask me. The third season, which I think was when I was starting to lose a little bit of interest, a little bit, but I was still obsessed at this point. And then season 4, which again, I really, really enjoyed. I thought it was a really good season from what I remember. And then season 5, I was definitely losing interest during season 5. I wasn't really that big a fan. And then I watched the season 6 premiere, and that's when I gave up. I think the season 6 premiere was the last episode of the Vampire Diaries I ever watched. But it would actually be nice to maybe collect the Blu-rays again and complete the collection rather than just the first 4 seasons. But I just want to show you guys that, okay? I have my coffee. I have the book, I have a highlighter because that's what I'll be doing. I'll be highlighting as much as I can. And yeah, I'll tell you guys what I think of the first book. I wasn't planning on giving you an update this early because I've read the first 2 chapters and I need to unload. I need to get things off my chest. Yeah, 2 chapters in and I'm already like, why am I doing this? I know this book is not for me. I know I'm not in the age demographic anymore, which honestly does break my heart. Because there was a time when I was in this age demographic and I was the intended audience and now I'm not anymore. I'm trying not to let that deter me. But I feel like even if I was in the age demographic, there are some things, especially about the characters, that I would detest then as much as I do now. I mean, starting off though, I feel like the story has kind of started pretty well. Like, I'm enjoying the story aspect of it, as in what the plot is giving me. But the characters, oh my god, I hate them so much, and it's been 2 chapters. I don't remember, and I'm pretty sure there was some kind of like meme thing about it, but like Elena from the TV show, I'm sure a lot of people do find her annoying, but she has nothing on Book Elena. I'm telling you, I can't even remember that much from the original show now. I really do need a rewatch. It's been at least 10 years since I last watched the first season of The Vampire Diaries. Probably more than that. But I swear, Elena in this is awful. Absolutely awful. And again, 2 chapters in. Okay, so firstly, we have Elena. She's coming back from Paris with her aunt. What was her aunt's name? I don't know if it's the same as the TV show. Aunt Judith. That was her name, wasn't it? I need to double check these things. It might be, because I remember really liking... No, it was Jenna. It was Jenna. I haven't even looked it up yet, but I think it just came back to me there. I'm sure it was Jenna. Yeah, Jenna. Okay, so like Jenna is the one who looks after her because her parents have died and her Aunt Jenna is looking after her. And she actually has a 4-year-old sister called Margaret. So there's no Jeremy, and I'm kind of glad about that because I did not like Jeremy in the TV show, honestly. Hated him. Really found him annoying. But yeah, we have Elena. They've come back from Paris, France, and Elena has this really bad feeling. She thinks something bad's gonna happen. She feels like she's being watched. And she's come back to, and it's not Mystic Falls. It's not Mystic Falls. It's called Fells Church. That is what this place, this town is called. Fells Church, not Mystic Falls. And Elena is blonde and slender. That is her description. And she has a slender white neck and creamy skin. Now, there is a huge focus on everyone pretty much being white in this, which I know authors back in these days, adding diverse characters into their stories was very few and far between, but there is just so much focus on characters being white that I just feel a little bit uncomfy with it. Like, for instance, Bonnie. In my mind, I have Cat Graham playing her, but this Bonnie has curly red hair. And then we have Meredith. Meredith was never in the show, I don't think. Meredith is probably Elena's best friend. I mean, Caroline and Bonnie are her friends too, but Meredith is the one that Elena missed the most. But Meredith is described as having perfect olive skin. Skin was flawless like porcelain, but almost as fair and translucent as Bonnie's. So Bonnie has apparently translucent skin. It doesn't add up in my mind. And then we have Caroline, who is another friend of Elena. She looks more like a Vogue model than ever. But yeah, Elena's feeling this like really bad feeling. And before she even gets to school, she comes across this crow. This pervert of a crow. Even the narrator says that this crow looks like it was undressing Elena with its eyes. I'm like, really? A crow is a pervert? Although I do think, just judging from the TV show, I think the crow might be Damon. I'm getting some kind of memory about that. So I feel like that's all fine and well, but it was just so odd the way that it came through on the text. The biggest crow she'd ever seen. Looking the way boys looked at her when she wore a bathing suit or a sheer blouse, as if it were undressing her with its eyes. Just so weird. And then we meet Stefan Salvatore. I do actually kind of like his introduction. It says Stefan Salvatore looked exactly like a normal high school student. He wasn't. And he's holding the body of a rabbit in his hands. He hadn't meant to kill it. And there are just things that I feel like really just add a lot of intrigue in the writing, but at the same time, the writing is so juvenile. Like, even to the point where I feel like this probably reads a little bit younger than young adult, and it adds for a little bit of a weird experience. But the characters, honestly, as soon as they get to school, as soon as Elena gets to school, as soon as Stefan gets to school, although Stefan I feel like is probably my favourite character so far, just out of everyone so far we've been introduced to. Oh, right, so Elena is apparently this queen of the school, and she knows it. She is so self-absorbed and self-obsessed. For instance, when Stefan comes to the school for the first time and everyone sees him and everyone is like, oh my god, who is this hottie? And then Elena starts to walk towards him. Yeah, so casually Elena started after him, the other girls right behind her in a close-knit pack. For an instant, annoyance bubbled up inside her. Couldn't she go anywhere without a parade on her heels? And then Meredith, her friend's like, if you're going to be queen of the school, you have to put up with the consequences. Like, I know this is teen, and I know she's probably... Actually, I don't even know how old she is. She's probably, 16 or something, maybe? I don't know. I think, actually, they're seniors. So I don't know what that is in American terms. I'm trying to think of High School Musical senior year, but I can't remember how old they were in that film. But the fact that Elena, with these girls following her towards this brand new hottie on campus, she's thinking, oh, God, they just won't leave me alone. Like, bitch, everyone is living in Elena's world already. That's what I'm getting a sense from with the way that she thinks about her classmates. She is the queen bee. She is the one who is looking down on everyone. And she even gets somebody else. Francis, she says, listen, Francis, I want his class schedule. Get it from the office if you can, or copy from him if you have to, but do it. And then she says to Meredith, what's the use of being queen of the school if you can't pull a little rank sometimes? If Elena doesn't have drastic character growth by the end of this book, I'm going to hate and loathe her for the rest of the series. I just know it. So I'm trying not to criticize too much about the fact that she's insufferable and very self-obsessed. And I know she is a teen. Like, this is how teens sometimes act. But it just feels so manufactured in a way that it just comes across as so unbelievable. It's like too self-obsessed, And when she goes on about boys, she says, after all, what was more important than boys? They were the mark of how popular you were, of how beautiful you were, and they could be useful for all sorts of things. There's a whole lot of self-worth projected onto boys, and you can just see how boy crazy they are, which again, I know, they're young. They're gonna be thinking these things, but I'm gonna need growth from this. Bonnie seems to be okay so far, actually, as well. She says that her cousin told her she was psychic, and she tries to do a reading on Elena, which was interesting, especially since I know Bonnie's character in the TV show, she becomes a witch. So, I can see the kind of seeds of that in this, but I can't imagine her with curly red hair. I really can't. But Caroline, there was a huge change of character in Caroline in the one chapter, in chapter 2. We meet Caroline, she's friends with Elena, they're, gawking over Stefan, and they're absolutely fine. And then in the next scene, when Elena goes to the food court, the place where they're going to eat, Caroline acts totally different. She acts as a rival. She tells Elena, a lot of things changed while you were gone this summer, Elena, and just maybe your time on the throne is running out. And they're talking about the royal table, and about Caroline not exactly being a commoner, and things like that. This is really bad energy. This is really bad mindset to have as a teen, to have these kinds of thoughts. And again, I know this is what teens go through, so I'm trying to read that don't at me. But the character shift of Caroline, she was absolutely fine with Elena outside the school when they were all looking at Stefan. And she even says to Elena, oh, come on, Elena, you have mad. What can you do with 2 boys that you can't do with 1? There was kind of this friendly banter between them. And then the next scene just drastically changed. She's literally set herself up as a rival for Elena. And I feel like the author just thought halfway through this chapter, Elena needs some kind of rival in this school. And what could be better if it was one of her friends, What a change. But seriously, maybe set that up beforehand, before you introduce Caroline as Elena's friend, who is friendly and she has friendly banter before we go into the next scene and they're not. That was just such a whiplash of a moment. And then Stefan, right, he has the power where he can like, kind of read minds, or at least he can like feel what the people are feeling and stuff like that. And he says one mind in particular stood out from the others. And he's talking about Elena. Her personality was powerful. I mean, powerful is an interesting choice of word. I will give him that. Her personality is shit, just not a great person to be around. I would avoid her like the plague if I was in the same school as her. But actually we get the first instance of Elena being compared to someone called Catherine. And Catherine was this huge like bombshell of a reveal in the TV show. And we get it in chapter 2, essentially, that Elena looks like someone called Catherine. But Catherine was dead. No one knew that better than Stefan did. So we have this really interesting plot point introduced very early on. And I feel like that's good because it's making it more intriguing for me because I'm already seeing so many differences that I don't think I know what to expect coming into the series. Even though I said I've already read the first 3 books, I remember nothing. I remember absolutely nothing. Oh God, and the end of chapter 2. This is why I decided to do an update. Elena ends the second chapter with, she'd have him, even if it killed her. If it killed both of them, she'd have him. And like, I totally get that sounds a little bit romantic in a weird way if you were a teen. Like, that's very dramatic and a little bit of a whirlwind of a potential romance. Really, like, I would be more inclined to love this if I was 15. But again, it just solidifies my thoughts and feelings on Elena as a character. She only wants things for herself. And I can sometimes appreciate that in a character, I really, really can. But Elena has already rubbed me up the wrong way. Oh my God, it's so cold in here, but we're gonna carry on like soldiers. So if I'm shaking through the entire thing, I'm not shaking with anger. I'm shaking because it's cold. However, I will say, I hate these characters so much. But not all of this will be negative, I promise. I know that these, again, are not written for me anymore, as sad as that is. But there is just so much to dislike. so much. And I was going to go through book by book, but, well, one, I was supposed to do this update like 2 days ago, and I just haven't. So I feel like because these are so intrinsically linked, if that's the right word, that's such a fancy word, wow. Since these are all pretty much linked together and flow as one complete story, really, I thought, why not just review by series? So I'll review the original series together, I'll review the return series together, stuff like that, rather than my usual book by book review. So hopefully that's okay. I will give you my ratings on each book as well. So even though I will probably try and talk about this as a whole, I'll most likely still go book by book. But yeah, this is all the original trilogy. No, it's not a trilogy. This is the original quadrilogy. So when I finished The Awakening, I thought, what have I got myself into? I knew as soon as I hit the end of chapter 9, that I was gonna loathe Elena forever. And just like all of the characters, in all honesty. But on page 132, I have introduced the characters to you before, didn't I? This is going to be all over the place, by the way. This is going to be a vlog that's all over the place. Usually I'm a lot more organised, but you know what? Let's just have a little bit more fun, you know, with this one. Yeah, literally, at the end of chapter 9, she's known Stefan 2 minutes. 2 minutes. And she says, "Oh, Stefan, I love you." She's already declaring her love for Stefan after, well, not even 9 chapters. Like, she met him in chapter 2. That's between chapters 2 and 9. She's fallen in love. And again, I know she's a teen. Stefan's not. Stefan's a 100-year-old vampire. Or 200 years, I can't remember. He should also know better. But they get engaged. They get engaged in the second book. What? I'm not even making this up. They get engaged in the second book. Anyway, let's go back to the first book. Right, let's break this down by characters. And I feel like I've already shown my hatred towards Elena. I'm going to get more into that. But say like the other characters around her. Let's go to like Meredith and Bonnie, her friends. It seems like every single character in this series revolves around Elena. They have no outside distinguishing personalities outside of Elena. Everything they do is for Elena. Absolutely everything. Every thought they have is for Elena. And that becomes apparent in the 4th book, The Reunion, when Elena's not even there anymore and they're still thinking and talking about Elena 24/7. So for instance, this exchange between Elena, Bonnie and Meredith, Elena says, "I do still want him and I'm going to have him. I don't know how yet, but I am. Until I come up with a plan though, we're going to give him the cold shoulder." Bonnie says, "Oh, we are?" And Elena says, "Yes, we are. You can't have him, Bonnie. He's mine and I have to be able to trust you completely." And then Meredith suggests doing a blood oath thing. And I'm just like, seriously? Seriously, a blood oath? They're literally jabbing their fingers, sharing blood, possible diseases, so that Elena can have the assurance that they won't go for Stefan. And this is on page 48. And Stefan, up to this point, doesn't want anything to do with Elena because he says that she reminds him of Catherine. And I will get into Catherine later. I feel like she's quite an interesting character. But like, a blood oath. Meredith says, we all press our thumbs together and swear, especially you, Bonnie, swear to keep the secret and to do whatever Elena asks in relation to Stefan. But every single action they do is for Elena. Every single one. Including this, which was Meredith's idea to do with the whole blood oath thing. And Elena saying, I swear not to rest until he belongs to me. This feels so toxic, like such a bad relationship. Even before it happens, I'm not rooting for this. I'm not. The fact that every single thought is consumed, which again, I totally get as a teen, sometimes you do fall head over heels in love with someone and your every waking thought is for them. But this is a fiction story. This is showing us this whole side to Elena that becomes her only side. She has no outside personality outside of her actions, her despicable actions, not gonna lie, in the first book, where she treats people like shit, but her love and adoration for Stefan, who she loves by the end of chapter 9. Stefan himself is just, he's just there. He is just there. Being sad about the fact that Catherine's no longer with him, and the fact that he was responsible for her death. And just the quick turnaround of his character being like, oh, I don't want anything to do with Elena, she reminds me too much of Catherine, to literally the next minute being like holding her hand, whispering sweet nothings into her ear, you know, things like that. It was just such a quick turnaround. And this is a short book, right? This is a very short book. And yet, the character development, it goes from one thing and flips straight to the next. So we don't get that natural progression with Stefan learning to kind of like Elena, because he doesn't even know a thing about her at this point. All he's done is avoid her, and then he starts holding her hand. I mean, to be fair, I do wish someone would do that for me. Not gonna lie. I'm getting on a bit. So if I could just get someone to show me that much love and affection straight away, I wouldn't push them away. But this is still so unrealistic. And I know, it's a book about vampires. It's not realistic in the slightest. But just the characters, they don't feel real. Even the human characters, nobody feels real. This just feels like Elena and everyone orbiting her. It feels like the author's fantasy. Like, she wanted this to happen to her. A little bit like Twilight. And honestly, I can see so many inspirations from this in Twilight. And then we finally meet Damon in chapter 15. He doesn't have the same kind of appeal as he does in the TV show. It was a good reveal, though, that he was there. There were little hints throughout the book that he was there. So I will give credit to the story. I actually think the story was actually done pretty well in this. It was just let down by the characters. Damon's introduction, it kind of fell a bit flat for me, even though we were building up to it. It was like, he was just there being a stupid villain. Like, he was just there being an antagonist to Stefan. But Damon, the way he acts when he first comes into it, he's just all about the power and making Stefan feel like shit. Which, you know, they do have a long history. That's all fine and well. But he's coming across as, like, again, not even a good villain who we've just, like, kind of brought up into this world. It's like, he's just there. He says some silly one-liners to Stefan and says about Elena, maybe she'll prefer me. Perhaps she'll find that real darkness is more to her taste than feeble Twilight, which is a good line, not gonna lie. Probably the only good line that he gives. But all in all, not a single character I was enjoying. Not a single one. They were too obsessed with Elena, and Elena was too obsessed with herself. That's pretty much what all this book was. In terms of the plot though, I didn't hate the plot. We did have the attacks that were happening in Fell's church, and we don't know who was doing it, although we do end up finding out who did it. Not in this book, in a later book, but like there's a haunted house scene and one of the teachers gets murdered. And like that's all fine and well and exciting. I feel like the story itself has set up so many great things that I just think are interesting and do lead to some great things that happen in books 2, 3, and 4. And I feel like the TV show does the whole thing so much better. But there is just a huge disconnect between the characters and how unlikable they are and the genuinely interesting story. Yeah, I can't connect the two. I can't do it. I didn't even end up liking Bonnie all that much, because all she had to do when she wanted to tap into her powers and things was she just had to stand there and close her eyes. Like, there wasn't really any kind of development of any magic system in this. I mean, I did kind of like the vampire lore, but I always love vampire lore, and I don't think this one did any kind of differently to anything else. I mean, we do have the rings. We have the rings that helps them, go out in sunlight. But other than that, it seems quite, copy and paste. And that's probably one of the things I enjoyed about this book. I will say, I did love learning more about Stefan and Damon's backstory. I found that so intriguing, especially to do with Catherine and how they became vampires. And, I mean, I can't really remember all that much from the TV show, so I've forgotten quite a lot of it. But I do think maybe it follows the same kind of story, where Catherine kind of pits the brothers against one another and gets them to kind of choose. And they end up really hurting one another and killing one another, which turns them into vampires because they had Catherine's blood in them. Again, I can't remember if that was in the TV show or not. Because Catherine was turned by Klaus, and Klaus is a fantastic character from the TV show. So I was really happy to hear about him quite early on in the series. But yeah, Catherine, she dies, as in they find her dress and ashes and the smell of burnt flesh. So they assume she's dead. And Catherine did that because of the brothers and because they wouldn't do what she wanted, essentially. They wouldn't both love her if she loved them both, and people make decisions in this series that only revolve around their love interest. Like, say with Elena, she makes decisions later on that are just only to do with love, even if that means sacrificing who she is, which, to be honest, isn't all that great anyway. She did need a change, but not for the worse, So yeah, Damon and Stefan killed one another, became vampires because they had Catherine's blood in them, and pay the price for the rest of their life because of love. And I hate every single time somebody died or like there was the mention of death to do with love, and Bonnie would be like, oh, that's so romantic. Fuck off. Losing your life because of silly things like that is not romantic. Ugh. Anyway, I give this book 2 stars. Not a great start. I did, however, like the second book a little bit more. However, that was mainly because I quite like the ending of it, because Elena died. Seriously, like, she ends up going off a bridge and drowning. And I loved that. I thought it was a great way to end the book. And I believe that didn't really happen until the end of season 3, I think, of the Vampire Diaries. And I can't even remember if Elena lived or not. That's how long ago it was when I last watched it. I can't even remember if she lived. But she ended up dying, which we don't really see her die. I mean, it's like a little bit vague at the end of this, which I kind of liked. But yeah, this one had a pretty good story as well. Stefan's kind of gone missing, and Elena has to kind of work with Damon in order to find him. And Damon tricks her. He ends up making her drink some of his blood, and she also has some of Stefan's blood, and she ends up turning into a vampire, which, like, I hate that. I honestly do. I hate the fact that she has had to lose her life this early on in the series so that she can become a vampire and essentially live out her life with the one she loves. Like, I hate that. I don't want to spoil anything that happens in, like, True Blood, for instance, but I did love True Blood. Like, I used to watch True Blood alongside the Vampire Diaries. I just think it's, like, a bad thing to do. I just think you shouldn't lose your life to be with the one you love. I just don't think that's a really great story. Like, it's just not my personal taste. You might love stuff like that. That's absolutely fine. I just don't. I don't think anyone should lose their life for someone. Even if it does mean that they'll be an immortal being for the rest of their life. Like, it shouldn't have to ever come to that, And especially not after she's only known him for like a week. And I don't even know if it has been a week. It happens so fast. And they're engaged. They get engaged. They're teenagers and they're getting engaged. Elena acts like such a sulky, teenager in this, which is, again, fine because it fits her character that we've been shown in the first book. But that's what kind of leads her to be killed, which I guess is a good way of showing that her behaviour was not acceptable, which is sort of a bad thing, really. Like, yeah, she acted like a brat. Yeah, she's making really irrational decisions. And she's marrying a guy she's just met. Did she not watch Frozen? Did she not learn anything from that Anna and Hans relationship? But, like, is that a bad message to send then? That, she gets engaged to a man she just met, and then when people tell her that's silly, she runs off, goes off a bridge, and dies. Like, what? This series, honestly, like, it's not boring. I'll give it that. It's not boring. But I just don't think we're focusing on the right things. I wish these books were rewritten. Let's focus on the story, because I do think the story was pretty good. I like the fact that Elena and Damon had to work together a little bit, and she had to put up with him. But even then, their relationship, again, develops far too quickly without getting from point A to B. We get from point A to Z, without any kind of distance in between. They just... it's infuriating to see no character development. Characters change, but there's no character development. I'm confused by how much this series is aggravating me, because I just don't think we're getting a natural thing happening here, like especially with characters. I don't mind the story getting bonkers because it's fantasy, but when it comes to the characters, I wish they were grounded more in reality, because then I would be able to believe it more and suspend my disbelief for that. I can't do it because the characters are awful. But saying that though, I would probably give this maybe a 2.5 out of 5, which is halfway. Like, that's not too bad a rating, in my opinion. I do think, if I was just focusing on the story, 3. The characters drag it down so much. I want to stop talking about the characters, I really do, because I'm just repeating myself with them. But they are such an integral part of this story, and not a single one of them I really like. Even Damon, he's coming across as more of a creep, more of a sort of pervert than anything else. Like, it's not even endearing like he is in the TV show. And he's a murderer. He is a murderer. Like, why are we that enamored by him? We shouldn't be. But we are. Not in the books, though. I mean, probably there are people who love him in the books. That's fine. But, like, the way he's being presented, the way he forces Elena into drinking his blood, even threatens her baby sister in order to do a blood exchange. There are just lines you don't cross. There are just lines you don't cross. A little bit of murder. I mean, characters in this series are expendable, but threatening a baby's life, that's where we draw the line. But he's not even a good character. I'm so sad because I love Damon in the TV show. I really do. Even though he is a bad, bad, bad person in the TV show too. He does bad, bad, bad things. But Ian Somerhalder though, oh, can he give it or can he give it? He's just so unlikable in the books, and I'm so sad. I'm so sad about that. Stefan's just a wet blanket. Stefan is just Elena walking all over him, essentially. He just does nothing. Like, all women walk all over him. Even Catherine. Elena, just everyone. He's useless. He's a useless character. But the story in this was better. I will give it that. It was definitely better. The third book is kind of blending into the second book for me a little bit, because we do have that cliffhanger at the end where Elena's being pulled out of the water and stuff, and she says, well, Damon asks, do you know who I am? Or do you know who you are? Oh, you know what, I might as well just have a look at it. Damon says, who am I? Do you know who I am? And she says, of course I do. You're Damon and I love you. And obviously that's not right. Like, what? You love Damon? No, you love Stefan. So that was a good little cliffhanger there. But I was rolling my eyes as well, because I was like, fuck's sake, I can't deal with this love triangle. I really can't. Especially since Damon, why... He hasn't had really that much time to get to know Elena, to fall in love with her. Yes, she looks like Catherine. She's not Catherine. And I know this is a huge part of the TV show too, but we've had no development between her being Elena and her looking like Catherine, and the mixed feelings that Damon and Stefan have from her. We get none of that. We literally just get to them falling in love with her, with none of the development. I hate it. I hate it here. There are things that happen in The Fury that, honestly, if it was any other book, I'd probably give this a 5 out of 5, because we have quite a lot of exciting action-packed moments now that Elena's a vampire and she's adjusting to life as a vampire. But oh my god, again, like, she comes across as so insufferable even in death, because she does die at the end of this. I'm just going to take the band-aid off. She dies at the end, which I love. I love that. I love the fact that we had this huge moment and she dies at the end, and I'm like, this is fantastic. What a way to build the narrative. What a way to end the book. Like, oof, LJ Smith, you dare, and you did. And she bloody did it. But we have this drawn out death at the end where she's like, Stefan, I love you. I didn't get to say goodbye to anyone. Oh my god. Like, which obviously is quite sad. I was supposed to feel sadness during this, but I was just overjoyed. And yet we have her depicted as this sort of saint, this martyr. And like, oh, it's like, so, it lasts pages. It lasts pages. And then like Stefan being hurt. And I'm just like, girl, you've known her 3 weeks. Oh, you can rest now. You won't let go of me? No, then I won't be afraid. Like, that would generally make me cry if this had been any other couple in anything, really. Because this is the third book in the series, and again, 2 seconds they've been together. Ugh. Oh god, it makes me, not gonna lie, it makes me a little bit sick. I just had to reread that little bit of that chapter there. It makes me feel a little bit sick. It's coming across as the author's trying to force this emotion on us, which, if you love this, that's fine. If you felt emotion, that's fine. But she is purposefully trying to make it all sickly sweet. The dialogue is just, ugh. And it's supposed to elicit emotion, but the only emotion I got from it was annoyance and a wave of nausea. Nausea? I actually don't know how to say that word. Nauseous? I'm nauseous. Nausea? Nausea. I shouldn't be reading these books, I'm not smart enough. But I jumped way too far ahead there. So let's go back to more to the start of the book. So when Elena has recently just been made into a vampire, I don't know why this is even a question between them. But Damon, when he's talking about Elena and her choice between the brothers, he says, we'll find out once she's herself again. We can ask her then which of us she chooses. Agreed. But I'm like, Damon, you have no right. You've known her a book, and during that time, you forced her into a blood exchange, threatened her baby sister. Where is this love coming from? Even his feelings for her has come out of nowhere. Why would you want her to choose you, Damon? You don't know the girl. You don't know her. And her looking like a dead person is not the answer. But it turns out that Catherine is the person who ran Elena off the road. She's back with a vengeance. Why? Her revenge is silly. Her revenge is like, what are you even mad about? You faked your death 200 years before because Damon and Stefan wouldn't agree to be in this throuple. So you pretended to kill yourself, was away for all this time getting stronger, to come back, cause Elena to die. For what reason? Even her reasoning behind her revenge doesn't make sense. It's like, why would you spend 200 years feeling this way? If you were that bothered about Stefan and Damon, why did you even fake your death? Seriously, just be with them. Why be away for 200 years, cause the death of someone they love, which, again, I'm sorely blindsided by. Like, why the fuck do they love her? And expect them to love her again? Like, what? The whole thing doesn't make sense. I don't get it. I would understand more if there was a genuine reasoning behind Catherine's reasoning, because I found her so interesting in the TV show. And I will admit, out of all the characters, the poor characters in the Vampire Diaries series, Catherine is the most interesting, which isn't saying a lot because I don't like her. I don't like anyone. But it leads to a fight between Elena and Catherine. Catherine dies, Elena dies. It's like, what was even the point? What was even the point? What did you actually achieve? Nothing. And it happens so quickly too. It happens way too quickly, in my opinion. I would say I love the build-up of her, because I love the backstory of how the brothers died, how Catherine was involved, how Catherine came back. But, like, it's over. And there's no interesting thing about Catherine once she's actually been revealed. She was more interesting when you couldn't see her. When she was just an idea, a presence in the back of everyone's minds, and the potential of, is she the figure in the shadows? Is she the one in the mist, you know? Like, that was all fantastic. And then you introduce her, and she falls apart. I'm annoyed. I'm honestly annoyed at myself, because I did want to love these books more, and I'm just, I can't do it. But I did give this one 2 stars. It wasn't like a 1 star or anything, but it was 2 stars. Again, the story is good. The story is there. It's right there. I can taste it. But everything else is letting it down. I'm just being dragged down deeper and deeper into the abyss. And it's frustrating the life out of me because I can see gold. I can see it's right over there. But I can't reach it because we have this wall block of shit. We have a wall block of shit. Prevent me from getting to that gold. I will say, these books are so quick to read. I literally read all 4 of them in 2 days. And I probably could have done it quicker, but I just didn't want it. So they are quick to read, they are easier to read, and for that reason alone, I would say they're probably worth checking out if you're still interested in picking them up. But we do get to book 4, and yeah, so Elena's dead. She isn't really part of, well, the big chunk of this book, but we do have Bonnie, who, we do have a lot of her POV, and we have, like, Meredith, and they are trying to live after Elena. And again, she's not even there, and they're just constantly talking about her, constantly talking about how much they miss her. Even like with graduation, because they graduate, even everyone in the school is like solemn, and it's just like, she wasn't the queen. I know they keep saying she was the queen of the school or whatever, but the way that people act and react, it just, 2 add 2 doesn't make 4. Wait, no, it does. 2 add 2 doesn't make 3. She was awful to people. She was so unapproachable. in the way that she talked to everyone at the school. Let's be honest. No one should have really cared, which I know is a horrible, horrible thing to say. Like, she was still, you know, a person who died. And if this was real life, fair enough. But it's not, this is fiction, so it's okay to say. But, like, she was awful. And she still is. And they end up doing some kind of like Ouija board thing so that Elena can talk to them again. And I genuinely thought I would love this book way more because Elena was dead and because she wouldn't be in it. But no, they do find a way to bring her back. There is, well, Elena tells them of this like dark presence, which it seems to be in every single book at this point. There's some kind of evil that we can't see, and in evil they have to fight and battle and stuff like that. So like she does warn them of this. They end up coming across Stefan again, who is being a lot more reclusive, and ever since Elena's death he just hasn't been the same. Even though Elena made Stefan and Damon promise to be kind to one another now and to do that for her, even though she had no right to ask that, in all honesty. After 200 years, seriously? In 2 days they've known Elena. They're just going to change everything. Anyway, Elena does end up coming back at the end. Ugh, like, she's like an angel now. She doesn't deserve to be an angel. She deserves to be in hell. It makes me sick. It makes me sick. She comes back at the end and like everyone's like, oh, Elena, we've missed you. We love you. And Elena's like, oh, I've missed you too. And everything's okay. And she's like got this light around her. She's not a saint. She's not a saint. She is Satan. Elena got up and took a tottery step to him. And then another and another, slim and newly fragile inside her borrowed dress. She wavered as she moved towards him, like the little mermaid learning how to use her legs, Bonnie thought. He cupped her face between his hands, just gazing back at her. Elena laughed aloud for sheer joy, opening and closing her own fingers and looking at them in delight before burying them in Stefan's hair. Then they kissed. Her face almost as bright as when she'd floated in the clearing like an angel, shining like starlight. My friends... Elena, Caroline said, I'm sorry. It's all forgotten now, Elena said. Oh. The clear light and shining love in her face was irresistible. A long time in the clearing there was only rejoicing. It just feels sickening. So I gave this book 2 stars. I don't know what to say now. I've been so disappointed and let down by these books. I was reading this just like, I need this to be over. I didn't really like being in Bonnie's POV. I don't know what it would take for me to like this series. I mean, I'm going to look at the other trilogies that are coming up with brand new eyes. I'm hoping they are just like totally different from the originals, especially with them being written so long after. I'm hoping for some improvement. But a lot of this really is more reactionary, and a lot of the character decisions are reactionary to other things. So there's like a lot of running away. There's a lot of, I mean, there is some fighting, but not a bit of it was interesting in all honesty. And I don't know why I'm giving this 2 stars. I really should just give it 1. But I just think, I don't know. I'm struggling to talk about this book even though I just read it. I need different characters. Usually I hate when book series change characters, but I need a whole new cast. I need a new cast of characters stat. Yeah, I didn't like it all that much. I don't really have anything else to say. I would say if you're going to read the series, probably read the first 4 as a whole rather than individually. Because I feel like overall the story from beginning to end, parts of it were interesting. I liked. Just the characters are the worst. And I have 9 books to go. Right, a couple of things before I start reviewing the next lot of Vampire Diaries books. I think I'm starting to get a cold, so please excuse my voice if it sounds a little bit weird. I don't know how I sound, I just know that my throat is not feeling the way it should. Well, let's pray for a miracle. But also, secondly, there are a group of men outside the house putting scaffolding up on the house opposite. So I apologise so much if you can hear that. I do have a nice new microphone that hopefully should drown out the sounds from anywhere else but my voice, which is already sounding so shit. Seriously, 2023 is out to get me. 2023 is like, Gav, we need to humble you, stat. We need to beat you down. That's what it's like at the minute. Anyway, don't let me forget my coffee. The amount of times I start an update and forget coffee's there, and then it's cold by the end, despicable. Anyway, getting into the return series of the Vampire Diaries. So yeah, these are the last books that L.J. Smith, the original author, actually wrote. And I don't want this to sound mean, but I can kind of see why she lost the rights to this series. You know what, saying it out loud does make me feel like a bitch. It really does. But
Oh my god, like these were some of the worst books I've ever read. I can't believe these were actually published. So yeah, I'm just gonna review these as a collective. But oh my gosh, I've never laughed so much at how awful they were. It's just like the really crazy odd things, especially that happened in Nightfall, the first book. I mean, a mixture of like really funny, but also like really sinister and creepy things. Like the fact that for the first part of this book, Elena, who we saw in the previous book, she had died, and then she's kind of come back and she now can't, really read or write. She's kind of, I think it was described as baby brained. I think that's what Stefan described it as. And so she has reverted back to, well, having the brain of a baby essentially, but she's still an adult. She's still who she was before, and she is still, well, some really weird fucked up stuff with Stefan, because he's like, I don't want to take advantage of you, but still he'll, seductively kiss her and do all of this really creepy stuff with her as she's in this form. But what's hilarious about Elena in this whole state, everything revolves around her and how she's seen as this like angel and stuff. It's even more in your face in this series than ever before. So the whole Return series is essentially about these kind of demons. I think they were called the Malik demons or something, that were infesting people in Fell's church and making them act and do things that they otherwise shouldn't have done. And they're acting in like some really weird and bizarre ways, which I'll get to in a bit. But like, say with Elena, and when her friends come to see her for the first time and Stefan's been looking after her, so they come across Elena. Honestly, I was laughing so much because this is just absolutely ridiculous. So Elena was sitting in lotus position in front of the room's only open window, with a fresh wind making her white nightgown billow. Her hair was true gold again, not the perilous white gold it had become when Stefan had unintentionally turned her into a vampire. She looked exactly the way Bonnie remembered her, except that she was floating 3 feet off the floor. Stefan saw them all gawking. "It's just something she does," he said almost apologetically. She woke up the day after our fight with Klaus and started floating. I think gravity hasn't quite got a hold on her yet. In the descriptions of Elena as this sort of floating angel-like being, I mean, one made me feel sick because I was like, look, she hasn't had this character growth or development to bring her to angel status, which is exactly what L.J. Smith was trying to portray, as we have her white nightgown billowing, making her look like a floating angel and shit like that. No, this is not the Elena who we were given, and you can't just give her that character development like that and give me whiplash for it. Absolutely bloody not. And Elena does things in a weird way with them as well. Elena radiated a calming peace and an unconditional love that made Bonnie breathe in deeply and shut her eyes. She could feel it like sunshine on her face, like the ocean in her ears. After a moment, Bonnie realised she was in danger of crying at the sheer feeling of goodness. Oh, for God's sake, like, I hated that so much. I hated that Elena was made into this pure white being that makes people want to cry because of how much goodness she radiates. It's so funny. It's awful. It's funny. And all I could do is laugh, or I will cry, because all I can feel is hate, which is probably a bad thing. Probably makes me a bitch. Okay, she ends up kissing Caroline on the mouth. It wasn't just a peck either. Elena wrapped her arms around Caroline's neck and hung on. And then Stefan says, it doesn't mean anything like what you're thinking. It's got nothing to do with sex at all. She's just identifying you, learning who you are. She can do that now that she's come back to us. And then Meredith says prairie dogs kiss when they meet. It helps them identify specific individuals. Like how? Like, I have to give LJ Smith props for coming up with this shit, because I'm just like, I never thought I would read anything where, somebody would have to kiss someone else like a prairie dog to identify them. And I just can't make heads or tails of it. Where's the part where Stefan ties her to the car like a balloon? I need to talk about that. Like, you could just imagine Stefan driving the car and there's Elena just like in the air floating behind it, just, lying there, letting the air take her. Like they've just come back from the carnival or something. It's hilarious. Oh, where is it? Please tell me I highlighted it. But hang on, going back to the pervertedness of it then, because Stefan does say she's like a baby, she can't talk. But he keeps describing her as a baby. He keeps saying she's like a baby. And yet he still does the things with her he would do as her boyfriend, which I find so problematic. She's obviously vulnerable. In a way, it feels like he's taken advantage of her, even though she is like come hither, come hither. Again, she is, as he says, baby-brained. She can't make these adult decisions because, again, he keeps referring to her as a baby. Where is the part where she's floating like a balloon? Oh my god, I don't think I highlighted it. I was probably too busy laughing at it to highlight it. Shit. Oh yeah, there was a part as well where it turns out that vampires can't actually have sex and that they're impotent, which does take away a lot of that, what's that word, like sexual tension between characters. And obviously, like, this is YA, so like I do not want to see anything like that. But like, teenagers do have feelings and they do have these manly urges. Where did that come from? Mulan. That came from Mulan. In YA, it's great when an author can handle that kind of topic with nuance and allows the reader, especially the target audience, like if you're a teen and you're having confused feelings or confused thoughts about things, then it's books like, I don't know, well, maybe not Vampire Diaries, YA books that do help you to explore that about yourself, or at least to approach the topic. But by saying that the vampires are impotent and they can't really have sex, it's like, in a romantic relationship, it seems weird, especially considering this entire Return series itself is very perverted, which I do need to address because it made me so uncomfortable. Like, what is my actual thought here? Am I mad that the vampires are impotent? I don't know, because L.J. Smith gives such mixed messages when it comes to the portrayal of her vampires. But by saying they're impotent completely, it does ruin some of that chemistry between like Elena and Damon, or Elena and Stefan, even though I don't think there's any chemistry whatsoever because I don't like any of the characters, right? But she's given us nothing in this portrayal of a relationship between them. Absolutely nothing. And there's plenty of time jumping, there's plenty of opportunities later on for growth and for sex to come onto the table, but she kind of ruined any potential with that by declaring that vampires are impotent. It is really important that YA books do approach that subject. They don't have to show us, they just have to approach it. But as we can gather from reading these books, is that L.J. Smith can't approach that topic with nuance, or like write at all, essentially. Which is, again, such a horrible thing to say, I'm sorry. But seriously, like, this should not have been published. Stefan wants to turn into a human in this one as well, and there is apparently a website that will help him do that, but Damon tricks him and traps him in a dungeon in a hell dimension. So I feel like a lot of the progress between Stefan and Damon in the previous quadrilogy has been eliminated. Again, we're back at square one. They kind of hate each other again, and it seemed like Catherine's death from before meant absolutely nothing. We have Caroline scuttling across the ceiling like a lizard, because at the start of this book we see her talking to a mirror, and her mirror is sort of talking back to her, so like, she seems to be infested with this kind of demon, which is an interesting storyline for Caroline, honestly, because she's just been an awful character, again, like so petty in a really over-dramatized school bully kind of way that just felt so pantomime. But she had a little bit more teeth in this trilogy, at least, where she does act so bad. Like, she acts bad, but in a way that can be explained by this demon that's living inside of her. However, Caroline completely ruins it. Is it in this book or is it the next one? She does something at the end of this book that is totally unforgivable. I will never ever forgive her for what she does. And okay, I'll just skip to that part then. So Caroline is pregnant, and it might be Tyler's, because she does give birth to a litter of wolf puppies. And I don't think I'm making much sense, because I don't know if I've talked much about Tyler and the fact that he's a werewolf and stuff like that. But Caroline, she decides, because she's an absolutely awful person and there's no reasoning behind it, she decides to accuse Matt, nice, sweet Matt, of sexually assaulting her, and gets the police to try and arrest him. He does avoid getting arrested. He does like have to run away and avoid the police. But Caroline does that. She accuses him falsely, knowing that he was not the one to impregnate her. And she does that out of spite. She does that to be a bitch. And that, to me, is, like, so unforgivable. Like, she's, like, trying to ruin Matt's life. For what reason? For what end? At the same time, I'm like, this is the Vampire Diaries. Why is this even a plot point? Why is this a storyline? Because when you read the whole thing, you realise it doesn't really come to anything. There is no lesson learned from Caroline doing this. There is no beautiful wrap-up of that storyline. Nothing. because nothing's handled with nuance. And when I was talking about sex as well, these demon things that are inside them make these like 15, 16-year-olds act overtly sexual. Like that's all this demon does. It makes the people who they've inhabited overtly sexual. Like there's a point where Damon demands Elena and Matt have sex right in front of him so he can record it. Like, what? What? Oh yeah. Why is this a storyline? Why is this a storyline? And Damon, I mean, even though he is possessed and what have you, it's still so bizarre and weird. And also trigger warnings for self-harm. But these demons also do get these like, underage girls to self-harm. And it's like really, really bad. It's like, I can't imagine why this was even a thing in this book. And it's made even worse. It's made even worse by who is actually behind these demons. So behind the Malik demons are the Kitsune demon twins, Shinichi and Maiso. That honestly, to me, felt racist because the Kitsune demons are part of Japanese folklore, and LJ Smith threw every single stereotype she possibly could at Shinichi and Maiso. She made a point of making them so evil and also incestuous. These Kitsune demons are essentially Japanese twins, and she threw every single racist stereotype she could at this manuscript. She should have closed that Word document when she wrote this, deleted the files, logged off, and threw the computer out the window. That's what she should have done. She made these demons to be perverts and to make everyone else around them act like perverts. Why? It's a Vampire Diaries book. I don't recall this from the TV show. I'm gonna have to watch the first episode of the TV show after this to scrub this from my mind. I'm also wondering if there is Christian allegory in this too, because Elena grows wings, rainbow coloured, so yay, gay rights, and she wraps them around Damon and absolves him of all of his sins. So this is feeling very Chronicles of Narnia to me. It feels like there is a lot of Christian allegory that's also laced throughout this. It's almost like saying other cultures are bad, and Elena being the white saviour person, which honestly gets worse in, I think, maybe the next book or the book after. Elena being the white saviour is like abolishing any kind of cultural impact from any other culture, especially to do with these twins, these Japanese twins that are wreaking havoc on Fell's Church. It's almost like the beliefs of these twins that is just revolved around being perverts and sex and self-harm and enforcing it on this town that is otherwise seen as sort of Christian maybe. And the fact that Elena, like, she's so pure, she is literally pure and good, and she makes people cry from the goodness that's inside her. And I'm just like, what is she trying to portray? What is she trying to portray? Because I'm getting flashbacks, I'm getting war flashbacks to reading Chronicles of Narnia, which had all of the Christian allegory shoved down my throat. In this one, it's like to do it on an even worse scale because these are teenagers. These are underage teenagers practicing really dirty things that they shouldn't be doing, and that shouldn't even be a plot point in this series. Oh, I hate it so much. Randomly as well, on page 431, I wrote down the page number for this one. Bonnie is tied down, and she's almost sexually assaulted by a tree with a penis. This was a point, like, I got to a point, because I was starting to skim. I was like, this book is so long. It's nearly 500 pages. I was starting to skim. I was like, I'm bored. Like, there was so much happening, but nothing was happening at the same time. I felt bored to tears, and I just wanted to rip this book apart, in all honesty. And so I got to that moment, and this is during, like, the big fight and stuff with the twins. Yeah, Bonnie's held down, and she's about to be, you know, sexually assaulted by a tree. And this is never really brought up again. The trauma of that is never really brought up again. I'm just like, was this really just used as a shocking plot point for that reason? Was it to shock? Was it to make us question what was going on? Because I've questioned everything since page 1. Like, this is the weirdest book I've ever read. The way that Elena beats them, because Elena believes. She grows golden wings and can overcome the evil in front of her, and then everyone starts believing in her. And it's literally like Tinkerbell and fucking Peter Pan. Elena is like doubting herself. She's watching everything happen. She's watching Bonnie about to get molested by a tree, and then she just starts to believe. A princess in an icy tower with a lust only for conquest, for power, until she'd seen him believe. Then the world of the vampires and Damon, all the wicked wildness, blah, 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 blah. Believe. Now she did know how to appreciate them, knew that if it came to that, she would die for them. Believe. Bonnie, believe in me, I'll save you. I remember how to fly. And then as she's flying above everyone, people shouting, Elena, I'm with you. We're all with you, Elena. We're with you, Elena. Elena, I'm with you. Elena, I'm with you. Oh my God. Like, can you imagine this being acted out on the TV show where Elena's flying around, right, with these golden wings. Or wait, are they rainbow now? I think they were rainbow, but now they're golden. And she's just flying around like a fucking fairy. And everyone's shouting from the bottom, like, we believe in you, Elena. We're with you, Elena. You can do it. And just like... It makes me want to cry because I read this and I feel like I can't get my money and time back. It's so ridiculous. This book felt like it was trying to be adult, but also trying to be a really stupid fucking children's book at the same time. The only thing that was consistent about it was the shit writing and the shit characters. Right, what's the next one? So the next one, Shadow Souls. Stefan's trapped in the dark dimension because Damon trapped him there because Stefan wanted to be human again so that he can be with Elena. But yeah, Damon got in the way of that. So Elena keeps appearing to Stefan and her tears help heal him. Again, I think there's some Christian allegory there. I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me on it. And this is where things get really off, right? Because we're trying, like, again, there's been no chemistry whatsoever between Elena and Damon. Everything's just been forced. And every time Elena is intimate with Damon, it's been forced. Like, she feels like she has no choice but to do it. So in order for Elena to, like, see Stefan, her aura has to merge with Damon. And for their auras to merge, she has to keep kissing Damon. Like, that's the whole thing behind that. She has to keep kissing him and kissing him and kissing him in order for her to have any power to see Stefan. Again, she has no choice. She has no choice but to be with Damon in this moment. There's never ever been a choice for Elena. It's always been forced. So why are we trying to force this Elena and Damon narrative when this entire time it's been the most toxic relationship? And I'm speaking on all relationships in this book. All of them are toxic. Let's not lie. Elena and Stefan, that ain't easy sailing. I'm not forgiving him after what he did to Elena while she was baby-brained. Like, I'm not doing that. He took advantage. Just like Damon's taking advantage of Elena here as well. And like, I now really hating Stefan and Damon and Elena equally. Like, I feel like they're three of the worst protagonists I've ever read. I've never done this before where I've written so many notes, but I hated it so much, okay? And I wanted to make sure that I have the evidence to back up my hatred. Yeah, the only times they have any chemistry between Elena and Damon is when he forces it, and she keeps backing away, accusing him of influencing her. And it's not healthy, it's toxic. Like, she's right there. Every single time, it's because he's influenced her. And that's so manipulative, so bad. And I would hate for teens who read this to think that was a healthy relationship, to root for Elena and Damon. I mean, there's definitely people out there who do. And, you know, Damon and Elena from the TV show, I could stand more. But when it's portrayed in the books, all of Elena's choice and free will is taken from her when it comes to Damon. Every time. Elena retains her holier-than-thou personality throughout this book. And again, we didn't ever have that natural progression of her character. She's holier-than-thou. And whatever the fuck she is now, she's not exactly a vampire. She's not a fucking fairy. I don't know what the fuck she is anymore. But she's just better than you. That's all I know. I don't know what she is, but she's better than all of us. Probably the best person to walk on earth since Jesus. That's exactly, I think, the way that L.J. Smith tried to portray her. And then when I think it can't get any more problematic, this is when I think it gets the most problematic. But Elena does arrive at a city, or they arrive at a city in this sort of hell dimension, on this way to save Stefan. They arrive at a city referred to as the slums, and it's filled with slaves, right? So Elena saves a pregnant woman, and an angry mob demands punishment for Elena's interference, right? Damon does end up taking a whipping for Elena. Elena is forced to be a slave for about 10 minutes. And then, I find this awful, right? So, yeah, she is sort of portrayed as a bit of a white knight to this pregnant woman. And I guess in her mind, in Elena's mind, she felt like a white knight for all of the slaves that were there. Because after being a slave for 10 minutes, she tells a slave herself that she understands them. And she even indicates very loosely that they had a choice. And that made me want to DNF the series right now. Slaves obviously don't have a choice. But she's admiring their strength because of their choice. They have no choice. Just like it parallels awfully well to the sort of slave master fetish that L.J. Smith seems to be enforcing on the Elena and Damon dynamic. And it feels like Elena coming across this city where she is a sort of white knight is reinforcing the idea that it's okay for Elena and Damon to be together because even though Elena's been influenced by Damon's toxic influence, she still has a choice. Even though every single time they've kissed, every single time they've been intimate, she's been forced to do it. Interesting. I just hate the fact that we had this as a theme in this book, and the fact that we had this even portrayal of the slums where all of these slaves live, and the fact that Elena is the one to ride in on her horse and again look down on everyone, pretend that she can understand them because she was a slave for 10 minutes. I wanted to DNF the series right there and then. I really did. There is more Christianity allusions. There is a point where Elena visits Stefan in a dreamlike state, and Stefan begs God to let him touch Elena, and God grants the wish. He can touch Elena. And again, like, I'm unsure about how L.J. Smith is trying to portray this Christian allegory. I mean, I feel like I could see it from even the very first few books, but it's been so much more prevalent in the Return series than anything else. And I'm unsure why L.J. Smith decided to put this in a teen series about vampires. When surely vampires are beings of darkness, right? They feed off blood, and I know Stefan wants to be a human and to be with Elena and his love for her, even though, again, I don't feel like their love has blossomed or grew in an organic way. But yeah, like, I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand how heavy-handed a lot of this Christian allegory is in Vampire Diaries. It's really off-putting. It's really turning me off. At this point, I can't even really remember what happened at the end of this book. I just wrote a series of events happen that I care not for. Fair. Oh, I do remember Damon was made human by the end. Because of the magic that was intended for Stefan, Damon accidentally took it. And then Damon tries to revert back to being a vampire in the third book in the series. Yeah, I said, didn't care for what happened in Fell's Church. Bonnie fainted a lot. Meredith does question Elena and Damon's relationship. Probably the only good thing that she's done. But again, she has no character personality beyond her being a friend of Elena's. Yet again, we are shown how every single character revolves around Elena. Yep. And they are passive in this entire franchise because the story happens to them. Elena happens to them, not the other way around. So, I fucking hated it. When I tell you as well that Midnight, the third book in the Return series, and the last book that L.J. Smith wrote, I got to the end and I was like, well, thank fuck she didn't write any more of the Vampire Diaries books. I'll probably regret saying that. But again, this was just like another awful thing, and something happened at the end of this book that made me pull my hair out. It's one of my least favourite tropes ever. Let's just say that. I'll get to it in a second. But in this one, we have Damon. He tries to go back down to, like, the hell dimension or the dark dimension, and he accidentally brings Bonnie with him so that he can become a vampire again. Did not care for that whole thing either. I didn't find the chemistry or anything between Damon and Bonnie. I just find both of them, I mean, I do in the TV show, but that's only because Ian Somerhalder and Kat Graham, who play those characters, are perfect in those roles. Although again, I do reiterate that Kat Graham deserved better as Bonnie, just saying. Yeah, Bonnie is ended up turning into a slave. Again, we have more of this kind of slave portrayal, and it adds nothing to the story. There is no reason for it to be included. I find it highly problematic that it's in here. We have a huge 180 on Meredith's character in this book. We find out that her brother was attacked by Klaus, and he is a vampire hunter now, and Meredith is also half vampire. So this information has come out of nowhere. This is the first time we hear about it. Is that supposed to make Meredith a more likable character? Is that supposed to give her more, I don't know, personality? Because it really doesn't. It actually really doesn't. In fact, it just confuses me all the more. Because this apparently happened ages ago, right? And this is the first we hear of it? She's shown no signs of this beforehand. What are you talking about? So she refers to herself as a hunter-slayer, and yet none of this influenced her actions in the previous books? Bitch, where have you been? Where have you... I genuinely feel like L.J. Smith wrote this book, she didn't realise what she was writing, and she just tried to make things seem all that more shocking. Because she's like, well, it's the last book in the trilogy, let's just go out with a bang, let's just throw everything I can in here, including the kitchen sink. Elena becomes more insufferable because Stefan gets jealous about how Elena and Damon have been. Like, yeah, Elena's been kissing him so that their auras can merge and shit like that, right? The way that she talks about Damon, the way that she does love Damon, of course Stefan's going to feel jealous for that. Of course Stefan's going to be questioning that. And she gets angry at Stefan for being jealous. I'm just like, but that's like a natural emotion when the love of your life is making out with your brother. Am I the only person seeing this? And again, Damon is the one who's been manipulating her the entire time. Like, if I was Stefan, I would be worried. It's just... everything's toxic. Absolutely everything is toxic in this series. A whole lot of nothing happening again. I wrote Damon dies by being staked from a magic tree. Yeah, I was actually really happy that happened. But then getting into the end of this book now, because, again, one thing I hate is when things are reversed. I hate the resurrection trope, and this book does it in spades. So Elena gets the 7 Kitsune treasures, and she makes a wish to bring Damon back. And in the end, everything is reverted back to the start of the original series. So everything that's happened with Klaus, with Catherine, everything that pretty much happened since the beginning of the series is made redundant by this action. And like, time hasn't reversed. Everything's just gone back to normal. Kind of like a restart, like a refresh. Klaus terrorizing them, Catherine terrorizing them, and the Kitsune twins terrorizing them. Didn't happen. So Damon's alive again. This ends with a cliffhanger of Damon coming out of the mountain, essentially. I hated it. I honestly hated it. I took barely any notes of this one because I was just reading it like, look, let's get to the end. Let's get to the end so I can get to this point where I can talk about it. Because it frustrated the life out of me. This entire trilogy right here frustrated the life out of me. I'm going to give all of them 1 star. There's no other rating I feel good about giving it because of how awful it was. We start off with the most ridiculous stuff with Elena in book 5 that was so laughable. We got into really problematic and, in my opinion, racist stereotypes of like Japanese people in books 5 and 6, and slavery in book 6 as well. That was... don't want to talk about it anymore because it was awful. And the portrayal of Elena being holier than thou, all the Christian allegory that's blasted in here, and the toxic relationships between Stefan, Elena, and Damon. It's the most toxic relationship I've ever read. And now I'm questioning my love for the TV show. You know what, after this, I am going to watch the first episode of Vampire Diaries. I have to. I really have to. I feel like I'm questioning my whole love for the franchise as a whole, considering the first 4 or 5 seasons of the Vampire Diaries were a huge part of my life back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. Like, did I remember things wrong? Why is the book series making me question my love for it? And I still have 6 books to go. It can't get any worse, especially since LJ Smith got fired after this. And I honestly can't see why. I'm hoping the ghostwriters do a better job at this, but we're going to have to find out.
I was told it was urgent, come see me tonight. In the circle we're flirting, and we dance for hours. She knew that she had me, but I didn't realize I'm sleeping with a vampire. Got lost in the city when we drove through the night. Stopped by in an alley, and she kissed me wild. She knew that she had me, but I didn't see it now. I'm sleeping with a vampire. When morning has come, she's always gone. She will call me when she's run out of young blood, She hates to see me falling. That's why she leaves at sunrise, just when morning has come.
Like Bonnie's shitty psychic powers, I did turn out to get cold. And for this entire past week, I have literally just mainly been on the sofa with my blanket. I feel like I haven't moved since watching the first episode of the Vampire Diaries again, which honestly was fantastic. What a great first episode. I saw so many inspirations from the book and how the screenwriter, I think it was Kevin Williamson, turned it into actual treasure. Everything was just so much better. And it made me realize just how much I was obsessed with the Vampire Diaries back then. It was so good. I remember watching that pilot episode So many things I had forgotten happened, and it all came back to me as I was watching. It was just brilliant. And I have like a lot of favourite episodes from season 1. I'm like, do I do a rewatch of the first few seasons of Vampire Diaries? Maybe I should. I have actually finished all of the Vampire Diaries now. I finished these while I was sick this week. Yeah, let's talk about the Hunters series, which I honestly can't tell you too much about right now. I read these as I was dying, and honestly I feel like death was preferable. And I believe LJ Smith actually started Phantom, like she actually started writing it. Let's have a look at the thing that she said. There was this letter or this email that circulated after LJ Smith got fired, and she was actually in the process of writing this one, but then the publisher just completely took over. So she said, "Hi, thank you so very much for your kind words about Midnight. I'm so glad you're enjoying it, and if you already know that Damon says those 3 little words to Elena, then I expect you know what she does for him afterwards. I can't say how much I appreciate your understanding of the book, but at the same time my heart is so heavy that I just can't keep pretending about what's in the future for Delena fans. You see, I've been fired from the Vampire Diaries, mainly because instead of giving my publishers the strict Delena they demanded, I went ahead and wrote what my heart told me to do. They wanted Elena to realise that she was fond of or physically attracted to Damon, but that her one true love was Stefan. But I didn't see the series that way, and so Midnight is the last Vampire Diaries book you'll see by LJ Smith. You're probably wondering how this can happen, since I read the series and have done so since 1990. But the truth is simple. When I got a call asking me to write a vampire trilogy for Harper, it wasn't Harper who was calling me. It was a book packager, now called Alloy Entertainment, calling on Harper's behalf. Their job was to take author's work, put blurbs and covers on it, and sell it to a publisher. When I wrote the first Vampire Diaries trilogy, it was called Work for Hire. By the time I found out what that meant, it was too late. What it means is that the book packager, Alloy Entertainment, owns the books, not me. Even though they are copyrighted to me, I still can't write them without Alloy's permission. And they really hated that delay in the content, as well as the many scenes I had given to Bonnie, which they wanted to cut. They demanded only Stelena. And now they've gotten an anonymous ghostwriter to do the books the way a ghostwriter does Stefan's Diaries. The first book out after Midnight will probably sound something like my writing, since I wrote Phantom for them. But instead of edits, what I got back after I wrote it was a letter addressed to the ghostwriter by name, telling her to completely rewrite the book. Which honestly does sound pretty awful. Like, that's a pretty shitty thing to do. I have been fighting, coaxing and pleading with the people at both Alloy and Harper, as they already had the next 2 books out of Phantom mapped out. But there is nothing to be done. They simply didn't like the way the series was going, and unlike most writers who work with book packagers, I was not submissive, meek, and eager to please them. Instead, I had my own vision of the books, but you can kiss any more truly meaningful Delena moments goodbye, because I'm afraid it just isn't the view of Harper or Alloy. Meanwhile, I am devastated. Of course, I have other series done directly with the publisher, The Forbidden Game, Dark Visions, and the Night World books. But I put so much of myself into the Vampire Diaries books that right now I'm devastated. I never imagined something like this could happen, but still, I can't say that I regret having written Shadow Souls or Midnight the way I did. I wrote what I did because that was the vision I saw of the characters. I'm just sorry that from now on, Delena readers will have no hope of anything other than a Delena endgame, and that written by someone who will do exactly what she is told. LJ Smith. Now, it's funny this because we actually don't get, in like spoilers for the Salvation series, in the way that the actual book series ends, we actually don't get a Stelena endgame. That doesn't happen. So the whole firing of LJ Smith because they wanted Stefan and Elena to be the endgame, it doesn't ring right to me. At the time LJ Smith wrote this email, that probably was what they wanted at the time, but then they probably realised as the books were being written, it really didn't matter who Elena ended up with. The whole series is shit. Just take it off life support. I mean, I'm not surprised the publishers told her that they didn't like where the series was going, because neither did I. Honestly, someone does need to rewrite the books and make them good. The whole Vampire Diaries concept was brilliant to begin with. It was let down by really bad writing. Not just by LJ Smith, but also the ghostwriters. So the Hunters, oh my god, I can't even really tell you half of the things that happened in these anymore. I mean, Elena's no longer dead. She can see her Aunt Judith and her sister because she hasn't been able to see them since, I think, the 3rd book. Or was it the 2nd book? Because, yeah, she was dead. But now she's alive again. A lot of the events from before have been rewritten. And yeah, she can see her family again. All I remember from this is that there is a literal phantom that feeds off jealousy and it feeds off Elena. In a way, I thought it was a good exploration into that feeling of jealousy, especially since with what Elena's done with the brothers, for instance, and what the brothers have done to Elena, it's honestly a circle of toxicity with those 3. What they do with each other does make at least one other person jealous, and I feel like confronting that feeling of jealousy through this phantom was a good exploration of that. However, again, it added to note There was no deeper meaning in this. There was no actual nuance to that. Characters didn't learn jack shit. And now Damon is alive. There's just... It felt like such a disconnect from the previous trilogy, which I know because it was written by a different author and these were ghostwritten. But like, the disconnect is real. It didn't really feel a whole lot like the actual characters half the time. They were still insufferable, but you can really tell there's a shift in tone. It didn't make it better, it didn't make it worse. It just made it different. And honestly, I genuinely can't really... It was so boring. That's the biggest crime of the Hunters books, is that they were just so fucking boring. In Moonsong... I hated this one. In Moonsong, they go to college. Elena decides that she's going to step away from Stefan and Damon and kind of pushes them away. However, she then just randomly starts hanging out with Damon more. And it completely went against everything Elena was trying to do by pushing the Salvatore brothers away. You know, she tells them that she needs to be away from them to discover herself. And yet she ends up hanging out with Damon anyway. Even after telling Stefan as well, look, I don't want to see you right now. It's like, why? Why are you stirring the pot? Why are you making it so much worse? It's Elena's world, literally, and everyone just lives in it. Like, she sets the rules, she breaks the rules. That's Elena's game. We did have a bit of excitement with a villain who was completely stupid, called Ethan Crane, and... he's trying to get the materials to resurrect Klaus. And there is a fight towards the end of this book where Ethan should have died. He absolutely should have died. But actually, no, it turns out that at the very end, he didn't die. And he does still have the materials to resurrect Klaus. So what does he go ahead and do? He resurrects Klaus. And then at the very start of this book, Klaus kills him. Because he's stupid. Ethan is instantly killed by Klaus because when has it ever went well for someone when they've resurrected a being from the past? Did they expect gratitude? Have they never seen Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost? Elena learns that she's an earthly guardian, which of fucking course, because they need another excuse to make her the best in the world and make her better than everyone else. And she's essentially untouchable. She can't be killed by a supernatural force. And it doesn't matter anyway because, like everything and everybody in this series, they don't really die. There are that many resurrections, I'm starting to wonder who is actually alive and who is actually dead. We have a side storyline of Meredith and her brother, who, remember, he was attacked by Klaus. Meredith in this one has to grapple with the fact that she might have to kill her brother. Did I care? Absolutely not. I had absolutely no feelings towards Meredith other than get the fuck off my screen. Or page. Klaus has made a vampire army, which includes Catherine. So Catherine's back, and he wants to kill them. So essentially, he kidnaps Elena, and then he starts drinking her blood, and he dies. Because Elena's blood is the purest blood of all. So if any vampire drinks it, an old one like Klaus, they will die. Her blood just kills him, and that's the end of that. That is literally the end of that. She unintentionally kills him. And then the only interesting thing of note about this book is that Elena reads in her mother's journal that Catherine is actually her half-sister. So I honestly, at this point, I was like, anything else? Anything else you want to throw at me? I'll take it. Honestly, I read these in such a stupor. I was pretty much comatose on the sofa, just like this. I don't even think I took everything in all honesty. I don't think I did. Just the fact that I was bored to tears. And at the end, we do have Elena ending up with Stefan and then Damon going off with Catherine. So if this had just been the end, I would have been fine with that because it just would have meant that I could live and just end the series there and then. But unfortunately, that's not the case. I didn't realize until actually speaking out loud these books just how little I have to talk about the Hunter series. It was the most boring series I've read so far, and I mean, nothing outwardly offensive like the Return trilogy, nothing like that, but the main thing is just the fact that fuck all happened, and I cared not for a single thing. So I'm going to give all of these 1 star. Again, at this point I was done and I was ready to move on, and as you can tell, I wasn't happy. Can you say Ash? Can you say, hiya, Ash? Hiya, beautiful man. You make me happy, don't you? I'm so sorry I didn't have more to talk about with this trilogy, but I just wanted it to be over at this point. And I feel like I probably talked longer than it deserved. So then we get into the Salvation series, and I do feel like I have more to talk about because I do have a lot more notes on them. I do believe that these were actually written by Aubrey Clark. It even says on the front, the Hunter series doesn't have a name for the ghostwriter, but this one's written by Aubrey Clark. And I will say, she did have some of the better writing that I've seen in this series. But honestly, when you're comparing shit to shit, it all looks nearly the same. It looks near identical. But I did get a sense of, okay, this isn't outwardly terrible or anything like that. So I have got to give props to Aubrey Clark for that. I will say, though, that we started off really rough because this is 4 years later, right? And they're trying to track more of the old ones. They come across someone called Celine. And this is where I thought the writing was terrible because Elena passes out when the action's starting. And then we have Elena wake up and the action's already happened. Selena's dead. And I was like, oh, okay, I already feel deflated. The fact that you robbed me of a potential big battle. I think Tobu's gone for a shit. This always happens when I start filming. And then we get into some plot holes. So remember how Elena is now a guardian. She can't be killed by a supernatural force, right? So Elena, who can't drive for shit, gets into another car accident where she crashes her car and she's saved by someone called Jack. And they're saying that if she died, it would have been an unsupernatural event because it was a car crash. However, this car crash was caused by a supernatural event because the old ones controlled her car to crash. So even though the means of a car crash is the most unsupernatural thing you can think of, the fact that she would only have died because of supernatural interference, surely that would cancel that out. And her true cause of death would have been a supernatural event. So surely that's a big plot hole right there. So like she doesn't die or anything, not that that was ever in question, but the way that these characters are talking, I'm like, do you know the rules of this world? Am I the actual Vampire Diaries expert here? Which I really shouldn't be. Yeah, she meets someone called Jack who helps her. The main plot of this is that there is a doctor who is creating immortal vampires, like genetically manufactured immortal vampires. And we also have the biggest, baddest evil that they've ever had called Solomon, because every single time, the villain is bigger and badder than the last villain. They end up killing Solomon really easily anyway, so I'm like, what was the whole fucking point in that? As a side note, Damon and Catherine are traveling Europe, eating people, shagging, doing what they needed to do. But then the most shocking thing that happened in this actually was that Jack ends up staking Stefan and killing him. And at the time, I was actually like genuinely shocked at that because I didn't really see that coming. And I was like, interesting. You actually almost pulled the wool over my eyes with this one. But then my mind went, they're going to reverse this somehow because the deaths are always reversed. And I'm not wrong. By the time of reading this, I would say that it was genuinely a bit of a shock. And the whole scene itself was pretty good. And the ending with Elena being angry, like her, the beacon of hope and goodness, her being angry, that gave me hope for the second book. It really did. So I actually ended up giving this one 2 stars. Because I was like, well, it didn't make me want to claw my eyes out. And maybe I was starting to recover from this moment on as well. I think I read the Hunters trilogy at the worst point in my life, in 2023 so far, of course. But I started the Salvation trilogy as I was starting to feel better. And maybe that's a reflection on that. Who knows? In the penultimate book, Jack has turned Meredith into a genetically mutated immortal vampire, which is honestly the only interesting thing that's happened to her this entire time. And I did like how Jack tricked Meredith because for a second I thought, Jack, why are you being so dumb? Because he reveals the actual weakness of an immortal vampire. Apparently there's a scar on the back of their head that's a bit like an Achilles heel, so that you can stake them there and then that's how these immortal vampires will die. I'm like, Jack, why would you tell her that? But turns out it was a trap. So I was like, okay, Jack, you got me. You got me there. Jack does have a real name called Henrik, but I'm just going to keep calling him Jack because I hate it when characters change their names when I already have established their name as one name. I'm not going to confuse myself, so he's just called Jack. Bonnie decides to get married to her boyfriend Xander, and I've never mentioned Xander. I've never felt the need to. They are so boring they make me want to cry. Bonnie tells Xander that she needs to go and help her friends, so Xander dumps her, and then Bonnie thinks, actually, you know what, my friends can go fuck themselves. Let's continue to get married. And honestly, respect for that decision. That is the most proud I've ever been of Bonnie, because for fucking once, she didn't revolve her entire life around Elena. And I'm not a fan of Bonnie. Again, I'm not a fan of anyone, but I was actually proud. I was actually proud that she was actually putting herself first. And anyway, if you kept having to run back to Fell's Church every single time something happened to Elena, you might as well take out a fucking day pass. because you're going to be there every day. The main characters are proving more and more just how dumb they are. Like, we are 12 books into a 13-book series. You would think they would learn their lessons, and you would think that they would have some kind of skill in order to combat these villains. Half the time, the villain takedowns have been luck, honestly. Like, that's all it's been. It's never been skill, it's just been luck. And in this one, we have Siobhan. Well, she's an old one, and she says that she is vengeful against Jack. She hates him, and she gives Damon a blue vial that will kill him. And he believes her. He takes it and injects Jack with it. But it turns out that the blue vial has a substance that will make him stronger. So Siobhan played him. Like, of course, they haven't learned jack shit from the previous 11 books. They honestly act dumb every single time, but every single time as well, things are fine by the end of the books. So I can't hate on it too much, but at the same time I can, because I just don't think there's ever any natural progression to the climaxes of these books. Things just happen, and it never makes sense. There is never a clever way to these climaxes. Toby me over, baby. Come on, let's lie down. It's nearly midnight, so it's time to go to bed. Come on. Like, I have no sympathy for Elena and Damon as well. They're mourning the loss of Stefan, and yet they're kissing one another, and Elena's visited by this ghost Stefan, and he gives her this really heartfelt goodbye, and, like, am I supposed to feel something? Again, we are shown the toxicity of this throuple. I have to wonder, did Elena ever love Stefan? Does she actually love Damon? I cannot tell. They are honestly just so bad for one another. I can't even talk about them anymore. It's hating. But the end, oh god, the fucking end. Again, it's like, it comes out of nowhere. But they are visited by a guardian. Elena and Damon, they're in Paris, right? They're visited by a guardian. This guardian says that Damon killed Jack, who was a human, even though he really wasn't, because he mutated himself. He was a monster. He was a monster. But because he apparently killed a human, that means Elena has to die. Because he killed a human, the bond between him and Elena is broken, and she will have to die. Literally, Elena Gilbert's life is now forfeit. Fucking why? It's just another way of putting the spotlight back on Elena so that she can have the attention, so people can rally around her to try and save her, just like they had been doing in every other book. And nothing changed. Like, there was no build up to this really weird, neck-breaking moment at the end. Oh, and I just really didn't like it. It actually got 1 star for me. This book got 1 star after we had a little bit of a rough one with the first book in the Salvation trilogy, but you know what? I could respect some of it. Couldn't respect a single thing from that one. But then the final book, oh my gosh, the final book, I, again, almost DNF'd it. I got to a point where I was like, why am I doing this? It, again, features that horrible trope that I hate, where things get reversed and everything is made redundant. But this time, because this happened at the end of Midnight, was it Midnight it happened in? I've read so many of these books now, they're all blended into one. Yeah, I think it was the end of Midnight, when the events had been reversed, like, time hadn't been set back, but the sort of events, like Klaus and the twins and Catherine, those things hadn't happened. But in this one, time does actually reset, so Elena is back to the very start of the series, like the very first book of the series, before she meets Stefan, before she meets Damon, back to that fateful day when she does meet them. And I hate that. She is given that opportunity from the Guardians to do that, so that she can make things right, so that she can save the Salvatore brothers. I was just like, they did everything to themselves. They deserved everything they fucking got. So Elena has the option to fix everything, but instead, all she does, really, is flirt with Damon and stir the pot and make things worse for everyone. Like, she gives her neck to Damon, willingly. She kisses Stefan in front of Damon, which causes Damon to fly off the handle. I'm just like, what are you doing? This is what you decided to do with your one chance to make everything right? You want to do exactly what Catherine did? Play both brothers against one another for your affection, so that, they'd kill each other? Like, her actions just didn't make sense to me. It felt awful. It felt wrong. I honestly got almost left. I couldn't stomach it anymore. The whole time reversal thing, I was like, not again. Has Aubrey Clark read the previous books? But anyway, I might as well have done it, because not really much happened after that anyway. So even though Elena leaves everyone, she does end up with Damon. It's her and Damon at the very end. They are together. And I'm just numb. I'm hollow. I don't feel anything for that. Like, they fired the original writer because they didn't want Elena and Damon to get together, apparently. And yet that's exactly how this book turned out, this series turned out, was that Elena would end up with him. Like, I should be more rejoiced about that because I did root for Elena and Damon in the TV show. But I am the total opposite in this. Like, I honestly would have loved an explosion that wiped everyone out. Fell's Church just crumble into hell. That's the ending I would have preferred. So I'm definitely going to give the last book a 1 star as well. I just genuinely got to a point where I was like, why am I doing this? I feel like maybe one of the reasons why I was so ill this week was because I was still reading this. And it was my body's way of saying, Gavin, stop, please. Stop torturing yourself. Maybe that's what it was. Maybe if I had finished reading these earlier, I would have felt so much better. And I had way less to say about the last 2 trilogies than I did the first 7 books. And I honestly should have just DNF sooner. These books are not for me anymore, but I also don't feel like they've aged well. I feel like all of them were pretty poorly written. I would say not a single one of them was written well. Even with the ghostwriters after L.J. Smith, they just were all bad. There was no saving the series. It should have had a more graceful death. There was nothing graceful about the entire thing. And I'm really bummed because I was really excited to give it a go, and I was really hopeful that it would be filled with fantasy and the kind of vampires I like, with characters I'd like. My gut instinct and initial impressions of the characters, I should have known then that me and the series were just not going to get on. I'm gutted. Honestly, I feel so disappointed. It is what it is. I just really did not like the series, unfortunately. Definitely stick to the TV show. If you're going to read the Vampire Diaries, bear in mind it's not like the TV show at all. And you're definitely safer just sticking to the TV show. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a like if you did and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave all your comments down below. Let me know if you agreed with anything I said, disagreed with anything I said. Did you love the Vampire Diaries books? Did you hate them? Tell me everything and let's chat Vampire Diaries below. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons for supporting my channel. If you'd like to join my Patreon or follow me on any social media, then all the links are down in the description box. But yeah, I hope I will see you in the next video. Bye.